As mentioned, we've got a great conversation and we've got three wonderful speakers joining us today, who you'll be hearing from next. Ronzio, founder and CEO of Trainual, Dr. Marc Jacofsky, Chief Scientific Officer at the Core Institute, and Ellie, Casson, Head of Policy and Government Affairs at Waymo. But first, I'd like to give some background on just a few programs and policies that really support our innovation here in our state. As one of the fastest growing and most dynamic regions in the country, Greater Phoenix is an emerging hub of innovation and activity with a robust ecosystem of technology companies, innovators, and founders. Our region is well positioned from an operational expenses perspective compared to a lot of other markets. We have an extensive higher education offering for companies to tap into. We are pro-business and have a full suite of programs and initiatives, plus favorable policy to create an environment where companies are really encouraged to test, deploy, and scale their innovation. We certainly are paving the way for tech innovation across many sectors and quickly becoming the center of gravity for many leading industries. Greater Phoenix has seen a major movement in the rapid acceleration of healthcare, semiconductor, AI, blockchain, and next-gen automotive industries, just to name a few, and is poised to experience substantial economic growth and transformation in the years to come. Now is the time to scale the investments that drive the region's resiliency through modernized infrastructure and enhanced labor delivery systems. Some key programs that I wanted to briefly highlight that I know our panelists will also discuss a little bit further are here on the screen. The Arizona Innovation Challenge, also known as the AIC, which is led by the Arizona Commerce Authority. The AIC is one of the largest business plan competitions in the country and is designed to advance innovation technology commercialization opportunities here in Arizona by assisting early stage companies and ventures to scale, playing a key role in driving the economic vitality forward. The Arizona Innovation Challenge has been serving this ecosystem since 2011, resulting in more than 2,000 applications and more than 120 awarded companies that are striving to become the industry giants of tomorrow. Of those 120 companies that have been awarded, they have gone on to raise more than $1.2 billion in additional funding, have had 11 exits, have created over 1,000 jobs, and 97% follow-on funding for venture-ready companies. Next, we have the Applied Research Center. In collaboration with GPEC and many others, the Partnership for Economic Innovation, PEI, established the Applied Research Centers to demonstrate how the acceleration model really works. Currently, the WhereTech Applied Research Center and Blockchain Applied Research Center are working to transform healthcare and security locally as well as globally. WhereTech Applied Research Center was created in 2019 to help launch a future of health technology ecosystem around Arizona's thriving biomedical scene. Located at Park Central, the center offers an engineering lab and community space for innovation teams, bringing disruptive IP to life. I next want to talk about some of the supporting policy of innovation here within the state. The autonomous vehicle legislation is one that I definitely want to highlight. Arizona has been a leader in supporting innovation, providing an environment that allows companies to test and deploy. Autonomous vehicle legislation in Arizona allows autonomous vehicles to operate under the sole control of an automated driving system. Additionally, Arizona law prohibits a traffic law being passed requiring human drivers in fully autonomous vehicles. And I know Ellie's going to talk a little bit further about the work that Waymo is doing here within the state. Next is the FinTech Sandbox. In March of 2018, Arizona became the first state in the country to enact the groundbreaking regulatory FinTech Sandbox. Arizona joined countries such as the UK, Singapore, UAE, as well as Australia in encouraging financial tech investment by instituting the Sandbox. With the Arizona Sandbox, startups, entrepreneurs, and established companies are allowed to launch products on a limited, temporary scale for consumers to test the software before it's open to the market. Next is the PropTech Sandbox. Under the governor's leadership, Arizona has established a global reputation as the best state in the nation to test, launch, and scale these new ideas and new business models. In 2019, Governor Ducey signed the legislative act to establish the first property technology sandbox in the US, giving visionary thinkers a platform to test unique tech-based property services and products here within the state. This is just a brief overview and certainly does not capture all the incredible programs as well as organizations that are supporting our vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem. ASU has continued to be recognized as the most innovative university for 7 consecutive years. Several of our communities within the region have been named as a top city to launch a startup. and we are home to the fastest growing county in the US. Our collaborative approach is a testament to the strong alignment with our higher ed partners and the many grassroots as well as community-led organizations that foster innovation across the state, like Startup AZ, Invest Southwest, Yes PHX, AZ Tech Council, Phoenix Startup Week, Flynn Foundation, and AZ Bio, and many others. Those covered today is just a snapshot on some that align with the presenters you will hear from next. I'd like to now pass things over to Chris Ronzio, founder and CEO of Trainual, to share a bit more about the growth and programs and policies that have supported them. Trainual helps fast-growing businesses organize the chaos of onboarding while training and streaming processes and procedures for scaling up. Chris, take it away.
Thanks so much, Mark. I appreciate the invite for me to come on and share my story. And I appreciate so much the support that Arizona's offered with so many different programs. So it was funny listening to you rattle off some of those names on there. I was jotting down more and more and more of the programs I've taken advantage of in growing Trainual. So I'll try to touch on some of those here. Like you mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Trainual, and it's kind of like a modern software training manual. So companies, businesses all over the world use it to capture their culture, who they are, their story, their history, their people, their roles, responsibilities, and org charts, their policies, and then their processes or standard operating procedures to put together a playbook for their business. And they use it to onboard their new hires and to keep their existing team totally aligned, even if they're working remotely from around the world. So the idea came from my own entrepreneurial experience. I grew and sold my first business in 2013. And to grow that business, I had to put a ton of attention into how things work, how we do things here. And I just had tons of documents and paper manuals and wish there was a better way. So years into my own experience, it came up with the idea for Trainual. Trainual was launched in 2018, the beginning of 2018, and the community was supportive from the beginning. I did a big launch party at the Saguaro Hotel, invited all my business friends and some friends from the ACA and other places, came in and celebrated the launch of a new business, which I think is so incredible how we all celebrate startups. Phoenix Startup Week every week or every year is a huge celebration of people that are just getting started on that entrepreneurial path. And I've been fortunate to speak at the last couple of years and give back. So as we started to grow the business, to grow Trainual, I was invited into Startup AZ's collective that they have, which is a cohort of growing business owners. And as I sat in those mastermind meetings, I got to hear from others that were raising money, convertible notes, things that I had never even heard of before. All my businesses were bootstrapped in the past. So I got to just soak in this knowledge and information from people that were a couple steps ahead of me. In the end of our first year, I applied for the Arizona Innovation Challenge, like you mentioned, and was fortunate to win that contest in 2018. And so going through that process to me was the first time that I took my head kind of out of the sand and thought about what does Trainual look like in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, which again, as a scrappy bootstrapped entrepreneur is not something I would have done otherwise. But the idea of this contest was the catalyst to help me do that. So after winning that grant money, we invested a lot in our team, in our go-to-market. And in 2019, we grew 500%, just getting Trainual's message out into the world. In the end of 2019, after going through the Venture Ready program all year, I had been taught to pitch, to communicate with investors, something I didn't think I would do, but was able to do successfully. And we raised almost a $7 million Series A. We grew and doubled again through 2020. And in 2021, last year, we raised a Series B of $27 million in funding. And so today, Trainual is a team of almost 100 people serving almost 10,000 customers in 183 countries around the world. And it's headquartered here in Arizona and supported by so many of these programs. Along the way, we got picked for the Global Rise program to expand out in the UK, and we can talk more about that. I've been supported by so many other groups that you mentioned. And so really fortunate to call Arizona home and to be building a next big company here so that we can continue to make an impact over the next couple generations.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate those insights and impressive as far as the entrepreneurial and kind of startup journey that you've had as a founder and your continued, growth and success here within the region as well as the state. So next we'll be hearing from Dr. Marc Jacofsky, Chief Scientific Officer at the Core Institute. The Core Institute was founded to deliver the best in orthopedic and neurological care and built upon a foundation of pioneering research in academia as well as community service. Today, the Core Institute is one of the premier patient care destinations in the world. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Jacofsky, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to present a little bit about the Core Institute family of companies and how we have benefited from some of the funding provided through these state programs. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Core was founded in 2005 by 3 orthopedic surgeons as a true Arizona startup company with a vision to transform the way orthopedic healthcare is delivered. And starting with Arizona, but with the goal of a real national reach. Our mission is to keep life in motion because the quality of life is intimately tied to our mobility. And we started in 2005 out of one office in Sun City West with about 6 support staff. And today we have over 20 clinical sites across Maricopa County. We have 8 clinical sites in the state of Michigan, and we operate our own specialty hospital in downtown Phoenix. And in parallel with founding the Core Institute, we founded a healthcare management services company, which is known as HOPCO. While Core may have more name recognition in the state of Arizona, HOPCO is actually the faster growth company that currently employs nearly 3,000 people, 2/3 of which are based here in Arizona. And HOPCO provides management services to physician practices, to orthopedic service lines in hospitals, and to clinically integrated networks across the country with a mission to deliver value-based care. So let's talk for a minute about what value-based care is, because it is really the core of what we do and what has driven our success. So I think it's important to take a moment to explain. And if we were to think about the most important aspect of care for patients, it's really outcomes, right? Patients want high quality outcomes, whether that is pain relief, improved mobility, an athlete getting back on the field. These are outcomes, and they should not be sacrificed for any other reason in the delivery of healthcare. But on the other hand, we have cost. And if we were to plot outcomes versus cost on a scatter plot, for example, we could divide the results into different quadrants. And clearly the most unfavorable quadrant of that cost versus outcomes graph would be having poor outcomes and high cost, followed by poor outcomes at low cost, because at least from the patient's perspective, we want to ensure that outcomes are high. And clearly the optimum quadrant to fall into is to have high quality outcomes at low cost. So we all hear on the news that the cost of healthcare is rising and rising at unsustainable rates. And in orthopedics, that trend is actually between 10 to 15% year over year. Now, most insurance companies or value-focused healthcare organizations are happy to bend the rate of increase, or what is called bending the cost curve, from one year to the next, and consider that to be a success if they can just bend the rate of growth. And in fact, one of the primary goals of the Affordable Care Act passed during the Obama administration was to bend the cost of care and reduce that rate of growth. Well, HOPCO has shown that it can not only bend the cost curve, but deliver a downward trend in cost when it brings its value-based care approach to a new market. And using real data from one of our insurance company partners, we were actually able to deliver a 6% reduction in year-over-year cost, which would equate to a $32 million savings to just one of our insurance company partners in one state. And those savings can be used to further incentivize the care team to provide value-based care, can be returned to patients through further incentives and the reduction in the premiums or increased services offered by their insurers, and can also bolster the bottom line of the insurance companies, frankly. So how do we do this? Because it isn't magic. It is based on a robust IT tool set that we have built from the ground up and a focused management approach that aligns the goals of physicians, patients, and payers. And one way to reduce the cost would simply be to deny patient care, especially for expensive surgeries, but that would clearly sacrifice quality. Another approach is to eliminate unnecessary steps in care delivery, such as MRI scans that might not be needed for a particular diagnosis, such as knee arthritis, but can add significant cost when a low-cost X-ray would suffice for that particular diagnosis and treatment. It's also important to really understand what electronic medical records systems are designed for, because they are data repositories for information, and they facilitate medical billing, but they do not contain any decision support algorithms. So we have built decision support algorithms that sit on top of or behind the most common EMR systems, and those prompt the care team to stay on our evidence-based algorithms. And the management services approach of HOPCO has been so successful that we are now managing service lines in 30 different states. The growth of CORE and HOPCO has been driven in part by the collaborative ecosystem between hospitals and insurance companies here in Arizona, which we have worked hard to enhance. It's only by working together with a common goal of high quality outcomes and reduced cost that this can be achieved. Now, our family of companies has continued to expand through startup companies, additional startup companies that share a common mission of improved healthcare delivery. In this arena, we greatly benefited from the support of the Partnership for Economic Innovation's WearTech program, which was mentioned in the introduction. And PEI provides matching funds to small businesses to help them validate wearable technologies. Our wearable startup, MyActome, is a fall risk detection system for aging adults. The wearable is actually your smartphone, and we use the accelerometers and gyroscopes that are embedded in the phone to track your walking stability, your balance, and then apply complex mathematical algorithms that help us to predict the likelihood that you will fall in the next year. The technology was originally developed by Dr. Thurman Lockhart at ASU, and a startup was created by the leadership at HOPCO, and the funds from PEI were used to validate the technology, both in Dr. Lockhart's lab at ASU and at Moore Foundation, which is the nonprofit research affiliate of the Core Institute and HOPCO. So if we can predict who will fall in the coming year, and we can enroll patients into a fall reduction program, and these programs have been shown to be highly effective at reducing fall risk, we can save a tremendous amount of pain, suffering, and cost. Falls cost over $50 billion per year in the United States and are associated with very high mortality rates. So you can see how this wearable app, MyActome, that was supported by PEI, is really complementary to the mission of the Core Institute and HOPCO, and really works together within our ecosystem to ensure the highest outcomes at the lowest cost for patients. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Dr. Jacofsky, and it's great to hear some of the insights that you had shared, as well as all the work that the Core Institute is doing, as well as HOPCO and the Moore Foundation, and the collaborative DNA that's here in our region, which I think is a consistent theme we continue to hear from companies as well as entrepreneurs that are looking to accelerate their growth here. So now I'd like to welcome Ellie Casson, Head of Policy and Government Affairs with Waymo. Waymo stands for a new way of forward mobility. Their mission is to make it safe and easy for people and things to get where they're going. So with that said, I think we've paved the way now for Ellie. So last but certainly not least, please take the screen. Oh, and Ellie, your sound isn't coming through.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Waymo has been working in Arizona for many years now, and we've had a fabulous experience partnering with local organizations, local elected officials, and city and state government staff. I'll speak a little bit about that now, but just wanted to kick off by saying it's organizations like GPEC that really, I think, foster that collaborative public-private spirit and that have made the experience Waymo has had working in the greater Phoenix area so productive and positive, really a model. for the rest of the country. So I have a few slides that I'll run through quickly to give you some background on our technology and the work that we're doing in Arizona. Marc has kind of delivered a little bit of my preamble. Waymo is an autonomous vehicle technology company, and our goal is to build the world's most experienced driver. We are focused on launching a ride-hailing service, an autonomous ride-hailing service, as well as a goods delivery service. So we want to make it safer and easier for both people and things to get where they need to go. The Waymo driver, as we call it, is the actual tech that goes onto retrofitted vehicles that allows our cars to navigate the world around it without any intervention from a human. So this is different from driver assist, which is tech where the human still needs to be in the driver's seat and at times ready to take over. And in the case of Waymo's technology, the human is a passenger 100% of the time. And we set about developing this technology with a focus on full autonomy because we believed that, this slide shows the different levels of automation. So Waymo is pursuing level 4, high automation. 4 and 5 are no human involvement in the driving process. 1 through 3 is driver assist. Most cars today have at least some degree of driver assist, such as cruise control being a very basic example, and then moving up to things like lane detection and automated stopping. But in the case of Waymo, the car is responsible for all aspects of driving. And as I was saying, we set about doing this when we started back as a research and development project within Google in 2009, because we believed that driving was not as safe as it could be. You may have heard some of these statistics. They are, I think, things we've all gotten somewhat used to as part of life in modern society, but they are really staggering numbers if you think about it, that every year about 40,000 people die in car crashes. And the majority of those crashes are preventable. They are human caused error. So sleepiness, driving while intoxicated, driving while distracted. And Waymo was founded on the belief that if you remove the human element from driving, you can eliminate those crashes. In addition, our technology, we believe, makes it possible for people who are currently unable to get where they need to go because of perhaps a visual impairment or something else that prevents them from driving. It increases mobility for those people, opening up a whole host of opportunities and connectivity for folks that are currently cut off because of our nation's transportation options. And then we are also very proud of and optimistic about our sustainability impact. Our fleet is majority all electric. And if you live in Arizona, if you live in the Phoenix area, you've probably seen our fully electric Jaguar I-Paces around town. And I think there's a lot of momentum in the EV space in general, and we believe we're a big part of that by offering a fleet of all electric vehicles. So whether or not you can afford to purchase an electric vehicle, you will still be able to enjoy the benefits of sustainable transportation by hailing a ride in a Waymo. In Arizona, as I said at the beginning, we really couldn't do the work we do without our community partners. In addition to organizations like GPEC and the state chamber and other local chambers, we have a lot of partners who are focused on the issues that align with our mission. So Mothers Against Drunk Driving, for example, the Foundation for Blind Children, organizations that have looked at Waymo's technology and see the potential for what it could bring to their community. So let me talk specifically about what we've been up to in Arizona. We've been driving in Arizona for almost a decade. In 2015, Governor Ducey signed an executive order that was, in this most recent legislative session, codified into law that does what Marc said at the top of the presentation. Makes it so that autonomous vehicles can really thrive in Arizona. That, I think, is kicked off what has now become an extremely robust ecosystem of autonomous vehicle technology development, testing, and deployment. Arizona is home to the world's only autonomous vehicle ride-hailing service in the world. That's Waymo's. It's available today in Chandler, Arizona. You may have seen the news last week, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, that we've expanded our testing in Phoenix with the goal of serving customers very soon, and that we've begun testing at Sky Harbor Airport, and hopefully we'll be serving customers there, potentially making it the very first airport in the world to have autonomous vehicle ride-hailing service. So you could land at Sky Harbor and hail a Waymo and get to your destination. Here's some recent photos of our exciting announcements. And I'll just finish by saying that I mentioned Governor Ducey's early support, the legislature's more recent support of this industry. And then also at the local level, we find that while the rules of the road and our ability to operate is mostly set at the state level, it's very important to have supportive partners at the city level who can really help us understand the priorities of the community, connect us to the neighborhood so we can explain to residents what we're doing in their community, why they're seeing our cars, that they will soon be able to take our vehicles, working with law enforcement to make sure they understand how to interact with our vehicles if they ever need to, respond to an incident, or so we've done some training with law enforcement. The relationships we have with local officials are key to our successful rollout. So I just really want to give a shout out to Arizona, the business community, and the elected officials and the city staff and government staff generally for being very focused on creating an innovative economy where a company like Waymo can come and thrive. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ellie. I appreciate that. And, I think Waymo is just a wonderful example of how Arizona and our regional ecosystem has supported companies in their opportunity to really test, deploy, and scale their innovation. And you're seeing that firsthand with the continued growth of Waymo and the services and offerings that they have here. So I'd now like to invite our panelists back on screen for a bit more of some facilitated panel conversation, as well as encourage those on the call as well to submit questions using the Q&A and chat function on your screen at the bottom of your screen. So we've heard a lot this morning about innovative technology, but kind of want to take a deeper look at the people and the talent behind the technology. So this would be a question for you all, or we can maybe start with Chris specifically. But with talent playing such a key role in technology growth, what can higher ed partners be doing to really support and accommodate companies that are really looking to grow and innovate here within the state and the region?
Yeah, I think the higher ed partners are already doing a great job giving the students the context of these industries and that there are opportunities here. So I think it's maybe just facilitating intros and handshakes, virtual handshakes to get the talent to us directly. We've had a lot of success hiring from the universities. And I think what's changed since I moved to Arizona in 2009 to now is that in 2009 and 10 and 11, it still seemed like people finished school and left and went to other markets. And particularly in the last 5 years, it seems like people are finding their opportunities here. And whether they go to school, at NAU or U of A or ASU, they're finding a job and moving to the city that they find the job in, and they're staying there. And so I think that that's just in its infancy, and that we could see a lot more of that talent staying here and really digging in to help us as we have more opportunities in tech for them to be placed.
Great. Ellie or Dr. Jacofsky, any comments towards that on the talent side?
Yeah, I'll echo a little bit of what Chris said. So as someone who did my PhD at ASU and graduated many, many years ago, my plan was probably to leave the state of Arizona, but I found a place here and have been part of a high growth company that's been very exciting. But at the time, I don't think the universities had as many programs in place to help transition students from the academic environment into the business environment. And ASU in particular has done a fantastic job in developing and really leaning on those programs. We have a lot of students from the bioengineering program there that are rotating through our laboratories and using our clinical patients as kind of the focus of a lot of the studies that they're doing to validate new technologies and new techniques. And it's been fantastic. And we are looking to continue to grow those relationships with other programs there, such as the health and computer science departments as well.
Great. And Ellie, maybe a question on, a little bit more about Waymo. And I know you had mentioned, the legislation and policy that supports it, but can you share a little bit more about why Waymo, selected, to operate here in Arizona? Obviously, legislation plays a key component, but just a bit more about some of the context on, the continued growth of Waymo here within the state and the region.
So I do want to emphasize how important it was to have clarity from decision makers, regulators, about what was allowed. That was very helpful early on in making Waymo and helping Waymo make the decision that we should choose Arizona, specifically the greater Phoenix area, as one of the first places to scale our business. As I think you probably have heard in forums like this, businesses look for certainty. They want to know that if they're going to put a lot of resources into something, they're not going to have to pivot in a few years and change their mind, which was one reason that we were so glad that the executive order, which had allowed us to operate with confidence for years, is now even more set in stone, and we have even more certainty because it's been codified into law. So that's just don't want to gloss over that. Beyond that, of course, we are building a driver, and just like with any new driver, if you're teaching a teenager to drive, you start with conditions that are more conducive to being a learner, a new driver. And Arizona offered well-maintained infrastructure. There's a lot of new development in Arizona, so the conditions were very good, high quality, and then also. We've now developed our ability to drive in snow and rain and fog, all different weather conditions. But in the early days, Arizona offered a stable climate, other than extreme heat and the haboobs during a short window of time. We knew we were dealing with relatively predictable weather conditions, which allowed us to grow. And now we can tackle much more complex weather and conditions.
That's great. Yeah, it's nice to have Arizona kind of being the proving grounds for a lot of that, technology and innovation. And I think you're seeing it firsthand with kind of how you described it. Chris, you had mentioned, I think when Ellie said haboob, you were going to maybe talk a little bit further about maybe some weather or climate, about quality of life here within the state.
I was just going to say, when I moved here, I used to tell everyone, you don't have to shovel sunshine. And I think I've heard other people say that too. And I lived in Boston, I lived in Chicago, and now I live here, and I can't imagine going anywhere else. So I'm a huge advocate for the quality of life here.
Yeah, it's certainly great. And this would be, a question for Dr. Jacofsky. Tell us a little bit more about how the WearTech, the Applied Research Center for WearTech, has really helped Core Institute test and advance that technology with the dynamic fall, risk assessment, and just kind of walk us through, the different pilots as well as opportunities that have been really beneficial for, the Core Institute and your partners that you have seated at the table.
Sure. So there are a number of different kind of small entities involved. the startup company that houses that technology is called MyActome. And MyActome was spending significant dollars on programmers in order to make a deployable application out of this concept that came from one of the ASU faculty members. And we needed to validate that technology in a clinical population of patients to show that it actually works to predict falls. And also, because your balance and stability is an indicator of your overall health, we think it will help us to predict patients that may have complications after surgery, patients who may have a longer stay in the hospital than we would have otherwise anticipated. So we believe it's a very powerful platform technology. And the studies to clinically validate a technology like this can be quite expensive and often are a limiting factor in the development of a startup company, because you need to have some data in order to raise additional funds. And you need to have funds to conduct the studies to get the data. And so PEI was really helpful in getting us over that, what could have been valley of death, in that they provided matching funds to the Moore Foundation, which is a nonprofit 501c3 that is associated with CORE and HOPCO, but is a separate independent entity that does research studies in musculoskeletal healthcare. And so MyActome provided the application to Moore Foundation, PEI provided funding to Moore Foundation, and Moore Foundation partnered with the CORE Institute to conduct the clinical studies at CORE that validated this technology and is continuing to show that it can have significant value to the healthcare arena. And we hope will prevent falls and fall-related injuries in the aging population in the years to come as this gets rolled out on a state and then national level.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, I think another consistent theme, through the collaboration and something that, I think is very special and a key differentiator of our market versus a lot of others is just the generosity and seeing different groups come together for the common good of, seeing the success of companies and knowing that they are truly, kind of changing behaviors as way as people, interact on their daily lives. So it's great to see, a lot of the advancements that have been made through that. Knowing that retaining great talent is a key for success, what are some of the strategies each of your organizations are doing to deploy your company in order to retain, the best and brightest? You had mentioned, attracting, great talent through the universities as well as others that are, now flocking to Arizona and the region because of the companies that are here and no longer having to go outside of the market to do that. But once those individuals are here, what are your organizations doing to retain, that type of talent? And maybe we'll start with Ellie first.
Sure. Well, the pandemic provided, it was, of course, to make a giant understatement, a difficult time, but it was also a time that gave Waymo and many other companies the opportunity to pause and reflect on some of the policies that we have around how people work and where they work. We are headquartered in Northern California, in the Silicon Valley. We've had a footprint in Arizona for a long time. And one thing that changed during the pandemic is that we increased the flexibility that people have as to where they work. And so we have seen team members making the choice to relocate to places that are more consistent with the life that they want to have. And some people have chosen, even if their job doesn't require that they be in Arizona, to move to Arizona. And I think that's a testament to the quality of life in the greater Phoenix area. And so the companies, Waymo has, said, hey, we're invested in you and we want to support you, whether you're here in the Bay Area as you may have been, or you'd like to go to a place like Arizona or somewhere else. So I give the company a lot of credit for introducing that flexibility. And then I'd also say that Waymo is, I think, a leader when it comes to the policies that support working families, working people who have elderly parents or children. They were very generous during the pandemic and have continued many programs that essentially create the ability to step away from work and care for the people in our lives. And that is another silver lining, I think, of the pandemic, is companies generally acknowledging that we all have complicated lives, that we are not the version of ourselves at work that where the rest of our life doesn't exist. We all got used to seeing each other's dogs and kids and stuff in the background during the Zoom era of the pandemic. And I think that's another positive thing that is continuing and that Waymo is supporting by creating a lot of flexibility through official policies that support parents taking time off, people who need to care for other folks in their life taking time off as needed while still maintaining their full-time status as an employee. So I encourage companies, regardless of location, to really like follow those kinds of practices. I personally will say it's crucial for longevity for someone like me and others at Waymo.
Great.
Should
Chris?
chime in? So yeah, I think retention, coming from a SaaS guy, retention is more important than acquisition. And when you think about talent and bringing on new people, we spend so much of our energy trying to find the right people to bring into our businesses and interview them and make sure we get them. So if you don't put the attention on retention for the rest of their tenure with you, then you're always trying to replace the people that you brought in. And it can be a big time suck and resource suck for the business. So we've put a ton of energy into this and been fortunate to have really low turnover. And we just announced the second year in a row, we were named as one of the Inc. Best Places to Work, one of 7 companies in Arizona. So really cool to be on that list back-to-back years. But, you know, for us, it starts as soon as we hire someone. They go through a very thoughtful, rigorous training process. So probably no surprise coming from our brand, our company. They use the software, they get onboarded, learn all about the company, and at their 2-week mark, we offer them a chance to leave and pay them $5,000 if they want to leave. And so this has been something we've been doing for a few years now. And I'm proud to say no one has taken the offer, but it gives us a chance for the new hire to double opt in, to say, yes, I accepted this job. And now you're giving me an out. Now that I've been here, I've met the people, I've been in the meetings, I've gone through the training, I understand the work that I've got to do in the next month. Is this really the job that I want? And so we give them that opportunity to take the money and leave or stick with us. And so far, everybody's been sticking with us. And then from there, it's the basics. It's listening to people. It's giving them autonomy. It's investing in their professional development. It's making sure that they have a career path for the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. It's giving them an open forum to share their feedback and showing them that you take action when they give you that feedback. So this is something we spend a ton of time putting out content around, but I consider us, one of the best at retention. So happy to share any specifics.
Yeah, it's great. Dr. Jacofsky, we're getting some great questions actually from our live audience. And one of the questions is, how can Arizona continue to advance in healthcare innovation, based upon, what you've kind of experienced and just the growth of the Core Institute here within the region?
So we have some very innovative care delivery programs that we've been working on with some of the major insurance companies. And I think there are some great opportunities for the state through programs like Access, our state Medicaid program, to put some pilot programs out there that challenge and incentivize healthcare delivery organizations to demonstrate that they can deliver high quality healthcare at affordable costs. So we think that that's one of the really big opportunities that we've been trying to encourage the legislature and others in leadership in the state to take on.
Great. This next question is actually for Chris. Many nonprofits, can use assistance with the services provided by Trainual. Are there any opportunities or discounts available for the nonprofits with a 501c3 status?
Yes, 50% off for all nonprofits. So you can just Google Trainual nonprofits and you'll see the page for anyone that's interested and falls into that bucket.
Awesome. And kind of a follow-on question, here for Ellie, what is the best way for, you had mentioned a lot of the community partners that you currently work with, but what's the best way for some of the community partners to engage with Waymo and think about, connectivity and collaboration?
I think the simplest thing I could advise is contact press at Waymo if you think that you might be have some synergy with Waymo, and we can take it from there. So press at Waymo.
Great.
And may I also encourage
people?
I would just also say that the Waymo service is something that local residents can take today. So I would encourage you to try it. Download the Waymo One app and hail a ride just like you would with another ride hailing app, and a car with no one in it will pick you up and take you where you need to go. So definitely give it a try.
Ellie, do you want to come on my podcast and go for a ride in a Waymo and talk about it while we're doing an interview in the back seat?
Yes, that would be awesome.
Cool.
Look at that. Talk about collaboration truly happening right here on screen. One thing, I wanted to ask, and Dr. Jacofsky, maybe you can kind of shed some light on this, but are there any programs or initiatives, from other regions or other states that you've kind of heard of that have worked well for, technology and innovators to really kind of scale and deploy their innovation?
I don't normally find myself at a loss for words, but so at the federal level, as far as healthcare delivery goes, Medicare started what are called the bundled payment programs, where if you think about it, when a physician does a procedure on a patient, if it goes well, that patient should be healthy thereafter. But when it doesn't go well, oftentimes they may need to come back for a second procedure. And the way typical healthcare payment models work, the physician would get paid a second time, and the hospital would get paid a second time for redoing a procedure that should have really been done appropriately the first time, right? And I think we wouldn't accept that from our muffler shop or someone tuning up our engine, but somehow that's acceptable in healthcare. And so they started something called the bundled payment program, which was Medicare is going to pay you one time and one time only to do a procedure, and you need to get it right the first time, because if you don't, you are going to eat the cost of the continued care for that patient in order to make up for your shortfall in that experience for the patient. And so those types of programs have really helped to drive quality outcomes and reduce cost of care in the Medicare population. So taking that kind of federal program, that federal initiative, and scaling it down at the state levels, and working with insurance companies at the state level to have a similar kind of approach, I think can be extremely valuable in driving value in healthcare.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for that. And Chris, this one's for you. In your experience, what's the biggest challenge, businesses face when scaling, from 5 employees to 100 like you have? How can someone, as their startup or founder with a similar type of, growth path or trajectory, what are some of the things that, they could kind of take away from just your experience in that?
So the first 5 was all about proving the model. Does our product work? Do people want it? Is there demand for it? And then going from 5 to 25 or 30 was more about scaling our go-to-market. Like if we know we've got something that people want, how can we get it out and in the hands of more people? And so it was a lot of marketing and a lot of inbound sales to be able to answer questions. And then as we got through that phase, we started to have additional budget for first for a leadership layer in the company. And so we started hiring more leaders, and then we started investing a lot more in R&D as we were thinking further than just, this month or this week. We need to have more product and design and engineering for us to be able to build what's coming later. And so I would say that it's just kind of a staggering, what do you need? What's most crucial in this moment for the business? And then thinking, what do we need 6 months, 12 months and on those those intervals further out. So yeah, it's been a journey, but for me, it was also letting go of having my hands in everything, bringing in capable people that can do a lot better job, and I don't need to watch as closely what they're doing.
Yeah, it's great feedback. And Dr. Jacofsky, how are some of the AZ wearable organizations here within the state, like yours, integrating their innovations with other AI as well as remote patient monitoring apps to help minimize the patient's use of multiple devices as well as software? So what are some of the things you all are doing in that space?
Yeah, I think there is a real challenge with multiple devices and multiple wearables. And there are a number of companies that have tried to do like remote physical therapy monitoring, where you provide a wearable sensor to a patient that goes around their knee joint or their shoulder joint during their rehab. And it's challenging on a technological level to deploy that sensor into someone's home and get them to pair it to their phone or their iPad without sending a nurse or somebody into their house to do that. It's challenging to get those devices back at the end of their care journey. And so we want to be focused on things that are improving outcomes and reducing cost. And a lot of these wearable sensors, unfortunately, have shown some increased cost in the studies that have looked at that. So I think being able to kind of integrate multiple different sources of data into common technology platforms is really important. And I've seen a lot of new technology around using the phone, the camera inside your phone or your iPad for measuring joint angles and measuring the movement of the human body. So rather than having to wear a sensor, you can prop your iPad against the corner of your wall and you can go do some exercises. And using some AI engines, these companies have been optimizing the ability to accurately and highly accurately measure knee joint angle, hip joint angle, shoulder motion. So it provides real-time feedback to the patient in terms of whether they're achieving their goals. And it also documents and provides that feedback to their clinician. So the clinician can accelerate their physical therapy program or hold back their physical therapy program, whether they're meeting those goals or not. So I think AI has become really an important driver in the ability to make these measurements accurately and then to optimize the care pathway for those patients based on their actual performance before or after a different orthopedic intervention.
Great. Yeah, and Ellie, it sounds like the state, has done a lot to support, innovation at the highest level for, companies to test, deploy, and really scale here. But is there any specific policy or things that are kind of on the radar for Waymo that you all are looking at that can help advance and make some advancements moving forward? Oh, you're back on mute. Sorry.
Sorry. From Arizona specifically?
I think at a, maybe even a federal level that, states are now looking to adopt in support of, AV, whether it's on the testing side or for full deployment and kind of the hailing a ride or rideshare type of opportunity.
I would say we're in a good place in Arizona in terms of the permissions needed to deploy a commercial service. As I explained before, we are still hopeful that we will see federal legislation that creates a unified, comprehensive set of rules and regulations for autonomous vehicles. That has been stalled for some years now, but it is something we'd like to see move forward because, again, that certainty and clarity would be helpful. So to the degree that Arizona leaders can express at the federal level how important that's been in Arizona to progress and fostering innovation, that would be great. And then, it's interesting. I think there's challenges to we find Arizona to be extremely business friendly, and our team members love that about the culture in Arizona. It is interesting to navigate the politics of a place where you have, some of the social policies are not always aligned with a lot of the team members at Waymo. So how do we navigate that? That's an ongoing challenge that I'm sure a lot of companies have, trying to take a business-friendly environment that maybe on the social side, the folks working for the company don't totally align with, and how to thread that needle. It can be difficult. So for what that's worth, not exactly making a recommendation, but something to be mindful of and mull over if you're in a position of leadership.
Yeah, certainly. And I think as we're kind of wrapping up with a couple minutes left, a lot has been done over the last decade, and really diversifying our economic base. But, looking ahead, if you had that crystal ball, where do you see our region 10 years from now from an innovation perspective? And we'd love kind of some final thoughts from each of you on that, just to kind of wrap up, today's conversation around Arizona's innovation ecosystem. So with that, maybe we'll start with we'll go in kind of the same order we started, but Chris, you can start, and then we'll go through.
So I think when you zoom out and look in terms of decades, when we think about 10 years from now, over the next 10 years, I think you'll see a lot of exits. You'll see a lot of funding events. You'll see people continuing to move here. You'll see the cycle that we're in kind of reset and hopefully start going the other direction. And when those things happen, the funding events and the exits, it breeds the next generation of companies. And I think the next generation of companies that comes up will have an easier platform and an easier start than the generation that, that I built mine in, or that these two have built theirs in. So I think it'll just continue getting easier. And that's what we need, is those cycles of companies building, being successful, having some kind of liquidity event or something, and then reinvesting in this economy and to continue building here. So 10 years from now, I hope it's an exponential lift to where we're at today.
Yeah, thanks for that. And Dr. Jacofsky, and looking ahead, where do you see our region, 10 years from now from an innovation perspective?
Well, I think we will continue to be a leader in new healthcare development platforms. Arizona is a great proving ground with a good regulatory environment for a lot of different innovations. I would really like to see us continue to build our workforce development through the universities, community colleges, and other programs. I think we have a unique challenge in healthcare where many of the tasks and responsibilities of our employees can't be done remotely. A nurse has to be in the hospital from certain hours, a medical assistant, a physician have to be on site, and we can't fill those gaps remotely. Perhaps some AI and other technologies can help to fill some of those gaps, but I think workforce development is going to be critical and key to the continued success of healthcare in our state.
Great. Ellie?
Well, this is my perspective, not a Waymo position, but I would say that Arizona is going through, the Phoenix area in particular is going through an exciting time. There's a sense of possibility and a booming economy. And I imagine that it's akin to what California felt like some years ago. And I would just say, maybe to look to places like the Silicon Valley that have already gone through this kind of boom time, and take some of the lessons from our experience, in particular, to really, really invest in housing development. I think that our region, the Bay Area and California as a whole, has suffered and maybe lost some business to Arizona, places like Arizona, because we didn't invest in housing. And so you have these exciting, well-paying companies that come to town, changing the cost of living, what people can afford for housing. And you don't want to end up in a situation where you have the very privileged and the folks who really sustain the economy through service jobs playing by different rules. And so I'd say hopefully 10 years from now, Arizona will be in a great spot where the jobs and housing balance are aligned, and everyone who wants to live in the region has the opportunity to do so, has a home that they can afford.
Awesome. Well, appreciate all of the thoughts and insights that you have shared. We are just here at time. So once again, just want to say thank you to Ellie, Chris, and Dr. Jacofsky for taking the time to share a bit more about your organizations, as well as how Arizona and the region have supported innovation, really, and being at the forefront of innovation here within Greater Phoenix. So with that being said, just thank you again, and appreciate all those that joined in on the call, and look forward to future regional reports coming out of GPEC. So thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.